Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another amazing episode of the Tech Your Business podcast. Today, we have another guest on the show. Our guest today is a #1 best-selling author. He's an international speaker. He's a coach, podcast host, and also a virtual COO. Our guest today, Richard Phu, is the managing director at Outsourcing Angel. He's also known as a business freedom designer who helps business owners scale their businesses to work without them, which is something we all need at the end of the day. So he'll talk about that with us today. Welcome on the show, Richard.
Thanks, Peter, man. It feels like, man, when you read that stuff out, it's like, what am I not, Peter, right? So I appreciate you having me on the show, mate.
Thank you for coming on. Yes, tell us a bit about you. What's a big background?
Oh, mate. So, I am, child of refugees from the Vietnam War. So when they left Vietnam, went to Australia, right? And basically grew up, not much at home, right? One of 4 kids as well, one of the middle children. And so, yeah, pretty much taught from the very start to be like, just go to school, get a university degree, get a good job, and you'll be fine, right? That's what we didn't get to do here because we had to run away and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'll do that. And I got into university, did a double degree in business and IT, and then got a nice job in one of the big 4 management consulting firms like KPMG in Sydney. And I thought, sweet, life's set now, right? All I need to do, man, is just work my ass off and get to partner, and then maybe I'll be able to transfer to KPMG Switzerland and then ski the slopes on the weekends, that type of stuff. And literally in the first 6 months, Peter, I look across the desk to another cubicle, and I'm like, how come there's this dude who's like 50 years old? He's only like, I think he was like associate director or something like that, right? Which is like 2 or 3 steps away from partner. And I'm like, every day I come in like 8 o'clock or whatever. This guy's here before me, so he must be here like 7 something at least. And every day I'm leaving at like 6 or something. He's always here. And sometimes I stay back to like 9 or 10 and he's still working. And I'm like, that's not what life is, right? That can't be me. That can't be my path here, right? And yeah, I got lost for a while, man. I was thinking, what do I do? I don't know what to do. I'm just going to stay in this job and just learn stuff while I'm here. And then I started going down this whole personal development journey, mate, and started learning from people like T. Harv Eker, Tony Robbins, right? And then, you've been to all their seminars and stuff, right? Where they're like, you've got to go out there and help people as well, right? Do what's in your passion. And I'm like, yeah, my passion is to help other people just like me, right? And be a coach, because that's what they sell. And then I'm like, man, I'm going to be so like that, Peter. I'm going to try and be Asian Tony Robbins, right? Like on the stage, learn how to clap like Tony and all that stuff too. And I realized, right, Peter, that, I was helping people, I was helping them out. And I realized it got to a point where I'm like, hey, why do I need my corporate job anymore? This is not fulfilling. I don't feel great helping billionaire companies, right, make squillions of dollars and fire thousands of people every year, And I'm like, I'm not helping anyone. So that's how then I made that transition. I'm like, look, I'm going to quit and continue building up this side gig, right? And until it became my main gig. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm so serious about being Asian Tony Robbins. I want to bring it to Asia. I want to go to Singapore, right? And bring it over to Asian people. And, Asian people just weren't ready for Asian Tony Robbins yet, right? I'm still waiting for the day. But I realized after cranking it out, business owners came to me, right, Peter? And they're like, Richard, how the hell are you traveling with us? We're in Thailand in some remote island, but I know you didn't buy a SIM card either, so you got no data, but yet you're posting it and stuff on Facebook. How does that work? How are you doing this? And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? I have like a virtual team, right? I have like 2 VAs that are just doing this stuff. And they're like, can you do it for us? I'm like, no, dude, why would I need to do it for you? It's so simple. Just do this. And they're like, no. We don't understand what the hell you're talking about, man. Can you just do it for us? And that's how I transitioned, right, Peter, from like trying to be Asian Tony Robbins, closing that down. And I'm like, hey, man, what if I'm actually better as a number 2 supporting someone else? Right. And so that's where I'm like, what if I use my consulting skills, remote team management skills, and help build processes for small business owners? And that's kind of like how I got my start over there. Then I built some businesses, left some of those, came back to Sydney, and then joined Outsourcing Angel, right? Where I'm like, you know what? And I remember I said to Lynn, our founder, I'm like, I don't want to be in the spotlight. I just want to be the guy behind the scenes. I want to go to be the guy who controls the spotlight to shine it on other people so they can be brighter stars, right? And that's kind of like what I got to do here. And she said, great, do that stuff here. And basically, yeah, what I did here the last 5 years was systemizing the business so that she is not dependent on her anymore. We have a whole team of people, right? And they're all operating, and I'm training them up so that then we can run things without requiring her around as much. So yeah, man, that's a bit of a long story around things here.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story. And what you say about being out of the spotlight is really familiar, because I've been like that too. The truth is that just June this year was the first time I got on video, put a video of myself online. I really and
man, it must have been scary, right, Peter?
Honestly, and the irony is that I've been in business since 2011. So you can just imagine, I've just been behind my keyboard, not talking, not being out there. So I totally understand that. So when you look at yeah, so when you look at businesses, a lot of them are really reluctant to let go of those things they do. Like you talked about being able to post on Facebook when you're in remote places and leaving it, trusting it to your virtual assistants. But a lot of business owners are really sort of control freaks and everything. So what have you noticed is the biggest block to them letting go of those tasks?
Oh, you picked it and hit it on the nail so hard, Peter. Like it really is that innate. It's this innate like need, I think. And look, I honestly believe part of it is an ego thing as well, Peter, right? Like, you can say it's a need for control, but it's like, why do you need control? And usually when we go in deeper, it's like it's a deep-seated need to feel important, right?
Yes.
To whether it is the team or other people. And, like that's what I believe ultimately sometimes the deepest root of when people are controlling is a need to feel important to someone or other people, and so if you can get past your ego and realize, because that's what happened to Lynn, right? Is I came in, she's like, hey, I got like 15 VAs working for me internally, and then a bunch going out to clients, right? But yet everything was centered around her. Like they would have to come to her to ask her, hey, Lynn, what do I do here? What do I do here? And she'd be like, bang, 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 this is what we're doing, right? And I said, Lynn, why are you doing this? Right? I'm like, stop, right? Get our operations, give it to me, and I'm going to train up this team to do it, right? And show you how you should do it, because it shouldn't be just on you to make the decisions. And this is kind of like what we try and do with our clients is, you might come in for a virtual assistant and you want to give them tasks, but giving someone tasks doesn't actually free you up, right? It actually makes you more trapped. It just creates a bottleneck in the long term, because you give them tasks, they come back and it's like, oh, Peter, I did these images for social media. Which one do you want? This one or this one, right? Or this one and this one. Do you like this headline or that headline, right? What you're giving them is a task, but they're not making the decision, and the decision comes back to you. And if you keep getting them addicted to you to come to you to make decisions, then you never get yourself free. And so the idea is to level up your virtual assistants, level up your team from just doing tasks to making the decisions in your business, and that's when you get free. So then you don't need to be around going, oh, let's pick picture A, let's do headline C, let's do copy A. Right, just guys, you're smart enough, have a guess, right? And the idea is to coach them through to pass down your own decision-making principles, so that then it frees you up, and then you can just be like, hey, look, I don't need to look at the social media images anymore or the headlines, because I leave it up to you guys. You guys are smart enough, you get it right most of the time. At the end of the day, just try and see what happens. So yeah, that kind of like ties in with like that, the whole ego, the whole control, the feeling of need to have control as well.
Yeah, so I think I'm getting now when you say you're the business freedom designer, because at the end of the day, what you said is really, really familiar too. At the start, I found it difficult to delegate. Then at the point where I'm delegating now, I actually have to draw up, okay, this, and this have to be done. You do this, you do this, you do this. And what you said just happens. Oh, I've done this. What next? Oh, I've done this. Is this right? And you see, it's crazy. So how do you suggest the business owner gets out of that trap?
Oh,
Yeah. Because you
the
talked
trap of
about
like
coaching.
what, delegating or having to make all the decisions all the time.
Exactly. Yes, because I know you talked about coaching and decision and transferring your decision making process to them. But but how do they do that? How does it happen?
Yeah, good question, Peter. So it's kind of like this. Let's continue on with that social media image, right? Hey, do you like A or B, Peter? Right? And then what I would do is, after a while, when you say that they're getting the task right, then it's like you flip it on their head. They come in one day like, Peter, which one you want, A or B? And you go, you know what? You're smart enough, right, Bob? So what do you think? And then Bob's going to freak out, right? Because Bob's like, oh, this is the first time Peter's ever asked me what I think, right? And they're going to default to try and deflect it back to you. They're going to be like, I don't know, Peter, whatever you like, right? Because they don't want to make a decision, right? They don't want to take the responsibility. They don't want to take the accountability if it goes wrong, right? And it's always easier for them to be like, you know what? It's just easier for me to do what the boss wants me to do. And then if it's wrong, it's the boss's fault. It's not my fault, right? So what I always say is, oh, look, it's okay, Bob, right? You don't know. Let's just imagine we're in a parallel universe and you happen to do know what it is, right? What would you choose then, right? And, the idea is trying to push them to make a decision, yeah? And 90% of the time, they'll probably choose something, right? Oh, I like picture A, right? And let's assume this, right, Peter? Let's assume we didn't like picture A, right? We think picture B is better, right? But they picked the wrong one. So Bob goes, I like picture A. Then I would go, all right, Bob, that's cool. Tell me, like, what do you like about picture B? What do you like about picture A? Sorry. And then he'll be like, I like this, right? And he's like, cool. Well, thanks for sharing with that, Bob. And it's important for you to ask that because you want to understand how they think, right? And how they came to the decision. Once you understand that, then it's like, let's mold them into the way we want it to be. And he's like, okay, Bob, so would it help if I explain what I would choose? And they're going to be like, yeah, duh, that's why I came to you, right? And so then you go, cool, thanks for that, Bob. Then, okay, let me explain this. I like picture B, right? Because one, it's aligned to our branding. Two, it's this. Three, it's this. And you explain why is it along those lines, right? Then it's like, does that make sense to you, Bob? And then it's like, Bob's like, okay, all right, that makes sense. So then, yeah, we'll go with picture B, right? And then he walks off and then you're like, cool, great. You're showing Bob how you make a decision, right? And explaining the why. And then from there, it's like, let's see the next time when Bob comes in again, right? Does he apply that thinking that I just gave him there? Even though it's not strict instructions, it's just, this is how I make a decision. And if they're a, person who wants to develop and get better, they will usually take note of that. It's like, cool, all right, Richard wants it like this, so I better remember this stuff, right? So then, yeah, I can do it better and get less, revisions or whatever it is. And so that's kind of like the coaching method here. It's a longer method. It probably takes another like 6 months, depends on the task and the decision you need them to make, right? But then the idea is then slowly you should see them getting closer to picking the right answers or designing the right work. And then it's like, cool, Bob, you know how to do this well, mate. Look, I don't care what picture you pick anymore. 80% of the time, get it right. Go for it, man. I got other shit to do, right? Like that's the way the coaching would kind of work.
That makes a lot of sense. And now I understand from your description why a lot of people would not do that, because at the end of the day, it's harder at first to teach the people your decision-making process and coach them. But the advantage is that long-term, it frees you up and gets you to it does.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Is a lot of people will focus on, oh, but why, Peter? It's a 30-second decision. I might as well just do it now. Right? But do you want that 30-second decision when you're on holidays with your kids, right? Skiing or something like that. And you're like, oh my God, like I can't believe Bob can't move forward because he can't make this decision. Right. And so, yeah, that's why I always think about, it's not about the time it costs me to do today. It's how much time can I save in the future if Bob knows how to do it, right? That I don't need to be around anymore for that, and that's what's more exciting for me. And so I'm like ultra long-term, like focused. Even if Bob ends up leaving, right, and then we have to restart again with someone else, I'm always thinking about, if this person sticks around long enough, right, then I should be able to see some of that return of like, I don't need to make these decisions anymore, because
True.
if we create a great workplace, they're not going to want to leave, and then they're going to learn how to make decisions that we do, which empowers them to do more, and then they get excited because they get to grow and do other things that they normally wouldn't get to do. So yeah, that's kind of how I think about it, Peter.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So when you look at business owners, especially the non-technical ones, apart from delegation, another way they free their time, because at the end of the day, for me especially, one reason I went into business was for freedom. Freedom above everything else. So apart from delegation, we know they can also use automation to free up a lot of time and resources. What automation tools would you find it, or would you recommend for non-technical founders to use to make their workflow better?
Yeah, it's a good question. So usually I would always suggest look at your existing tool that you're using, right? So in most tools nowadays, more and more coming out with more of it, is they'll have some automations built in. So like Trello, for example, has automations built in. ClickUp, HubSpot, a lot of the other CRMs, right, have automations. And when I talk about automations, I mean, I'm not just talking only about like, Active Campaign, how they, or other email marketing systems, how they can set up a like nurture sequence. No, I'm talking more like inbuilt automations. So it's like, I create a card here, I move it to this status, it then duplicates the card into another board or something like that, right? So that's what we call like the inbuilt workflows. And there's the external, right, workflows or automations tools where it's like, let's say ClickUp talking to Google Sheets, or ClickUp and Calendly, or Calendly with whatever other tool, right? That's where then you want to look at tools like Zapier or Make, right? Make.com, which is what used to be called Integromat. So those are the two big tools we play a lot with in terms of like getting different tools to talk to each other, right? So that we can send data around without having to have someone copy it from one place to place it to somewhere else, right? And so I would say if you're not technical, and I'm not technical at all, right? I don't know how to code, even though I have an IT degree, right? I did was it information systems, which is the most non-code thing that you could do, right? In university, right? It's just literally looking at writing stuff. And so, I have no desire to code, and it has those two tools are quite simple to pick up. Make is a bit more complicated, but it has more flexibility than Zapier, right, to do things. And then, yeah, that's pretty much how you start learning to get your apps to talk to each other. And then from there, you can develop more automations, right? And people are always developing more and more things each and every day for these apps.
That's good. So when you look at that's for looking at their tools and all that, but when you look at their marketing and sales processes too, do these tools also help in that aspect, or are there other tools that they can use in marketing and sales?
Oh, mate, there's so much you can do in marketing and sales, right? So literally for one of our clients recently, we just built this process. So they use like Notion to try and do like their social media schedule and content, right? And so, from what I remember is like he would shoot videos. He wants that to be uploaded in to LinkedIn, right? And, he had to used to do that manually. And our team found a way where you can put in all the content in Notion, right? And then once it goes into a specific status, which means go to schedule it, we can then actually send that information over to LinkedIn, and it will pretty much like prepare that post, right? I mean, look, you can use it with other scheduling tools too, but this was native in LinkedIn. So you don't see the, posted by Hootsuite or by Buffer, right? And this was revolutionary for the client because he didn't mind using those other scheduling tools, but he wanted something a project management tool so that him and his team can develop and make it better in terms of the content, the caption, and the video, and then schedule it, right? But then we set it all up so that he could pretty much post it straight away for him. And he wrote back to me an email expressing, hey, Richard, your team, I thought it was a pipe dream to make it this easy, right? But your team have made it somehow possible. And, you know, it's something as small as that, or even in like sales, for example. Like if you're not using a CRM right now, then, you know, sometimes I wonder how do people survive, right? In business without a CRM, because it's like everything's either in your head or in a spreadsheet, right?
True.
And I'm like, so when I came into Outsourcing Angel, we didn't have a CRM either, right? And so I installed HubSpot CRM, and then I installed Calendly on top of it, so that we funneled everything into one area of like, you know, if we get leads in, they have to go and book in this discovery call. When they book it in, we set up an automation to grab those details, send it to the CRM, create the contact, create the company, create the deal automatically. Because I know salespeople don't want to do that stuff. Salespeople hate CRMs, right? It's like, oh man, I got to document stuff. And so we're trying to reduce all these steps to make it easier for their salespeople to then just be like, cool, I got the deal in here. All I need to do is just open it up. And when I'm on the call, I'm just writing my notes right there that way, so that the rest of the team can support them from there. But they don't have to create the contact. They don't have to create the company. They don't have to create the deal, right? Even though you might be like, but Richard, that stuff doesn't take long. Yeah, but isn't it also the small stuff that stops people from doing stuff, right? Especially when it's small stuff they don't like doing. And so, you know, in the sales front, like that's kind of what we try and do. And then we set it up so then there's notifications. So, you know, in our process, it's like, okay, the discovery call is done. Now, you know, when they move it into that discovery call is completed status, we have an automation in Slack that goes, hey, sales support team, this deal needs your support to go and create a proposal for it, right? And then they get notified, they pick up the deal, and they run with the baton next. And then once they're done, you know, we send it to the client, the lead pays, we get a notification saying, hey, look, this person paid, right, the deposit. So, you know, onboarding team, get ready to onboard this person because they're booked in a time with you on this time, on this day and this time. You know, and so it's the automations are not just there to do stuff, but it's to set up notifications, meaningful notifications for the team, so then they know how to respond and when the ball is handed over to them.
Yeah, because that thing you said is one really true thing. I've seen that problem come up with a lot of companies that have CRMs. When it comes to the part where you have to manually input all those information, you see people just abandon the CRM, abandon it and just leave it. So yeah, so that part you added is really important, automating it and making it just fluid and painless at the end of the day. Yeah, so when you look at for the past few years or thereabouts, hybrid remote working specifically has been the rage, and we've had a lot of companies hiring remotely, which has led them hire from anywhere and everything. But when you see a new company going into remote hiring, what role do you commonly recommend companies to hire remotely for, first of all, before anything else?
Yeah, it just depends, Peter, really on how where you're at in the, I guess, life cycle of your business, right? Are you a startup where it's just you by yourself, or, you know, are you like a bit small, a bit bigger than that? You know, you're into like the, you know, 6-7 figure mark, and then it's like you have a few team members, and it's like, okay, where do I go there? Usually what I always recommend, right, if you're looking to hire, right, is whether you got a team or not, I always think about how do you free yourself up out of delivery, right? So for business, it's like, you know, you have to go out and do marketing, then you have to learn how to close, then you have to learn how to deliver, and then you have to learn how to collect money, right? And, you know, usually I always say for anyone here who's new is like, and they're going well, but they're getting stuck, right? Because they're hitting their productivity ceiling when they're like, oh my God, I can't take on more work, right? And so then the idea is, you know, you need to free yourself up from delivery work so that you can focus more of your time on the front end to go generate more sales, right? There. And so that's why I always say, think for people to always look at, and this is what we look at first, is your operational side. How do I get rid of some of the administrative tasks that you're probably doing if you're by yourself, right? And if you're a bigger team, it's also focusing on the administrative stuff that you're doing, right? It's focusing on, the growth of a company is, you can't, this sounds weird because we work in the operational space, but it's like, you can't grow your company by just, leaving yourself doing the operations. Why? Because you can go hire a salesperson, but that salesperson ain't going to sell your business as hard as you're going to sell it. Right. And so that's why it's like, I think there's always a lot of people who are happy to do the operation work, to do the delivery work, because they're like me. They just suck at sales, right? They just don't like sales, and that's why, most employees are employees because either they're just not really great at sales, right? And they just rather be like in operations and just be like, I'm just going to smash stuff up, but I don't want the pressure of, man, I got to go sell something, otherwise I don't eat tonight. Right there. And I think about it now, and like, there wasn't that many hunters, right? Like back in the very Stone Age, right? Like, not everyone is a hunter, right?
True.
How many hunters are there to, like, the people who and waiting for the hunter to bring back food, And so, like, I think that's probably like what the modern, like, sales people are. Because the modern sales people are just hunters, right? And they have to be driven, they have to be ready, they have to be hungry to go out and hunt. And there's unfortunately not that many people there who would do that for other people. They do it for themselves, right? But they're not going to, hustle as hard to sell your business, right? And so that's why it's always like, get someone to help you out with the operational side, whether it be like project management, whether it be client onboarding, whether it be customer service, right? Free yourself up from there, so then you can sit back and strategize, and then go out, go network, go do more BDMing, right? So that then you can attract more business to your business.
That's really, really great advice at the end of the day. That's really great advice, because, well, so when you've gotten this virtual team, you've gotten this virtual staff. Another challenge people have is training and onboarding, since these people are not at the same place with them. So what tips do you have for successful training and onboarding of these virtual team members?
Yeah, so what I would say is you need to make sure you have clear processes or systems in place to show them how to do something, right? And then, the biggest thing is, I think of this rule from a really good book about like delegating, systemizing, and getting back your time, And he says there's a rule when it comes to training people. It's a 30x rule, meaning however long it takes you to do it, it takes you 30 times as long to train someone else to do it, right? And it sounds crazy, like, but Rich, it's a 5-minute task, and you're telling me it takes 150 minutes to do a 30-minute to do a 5-minute task, right? And I'm like, yes, Peter. And it's not that you can dump that 2.5 hours in one go and then they should be fine to do this thing in 5 minutes, right? It's 2.5 hours over 2 months, 3 months, who knows, right? There depends on the person. And it's like, the first time you show it to them, they might be taking like half an hour to do it, because why? They want to make sure they didn't miss any steps, right? Doing it. Then they do it again, get faster, but then they stumble somewhere, and then you have to come in and be like, hey, you missed this part, or sorry, I didn't explain that part because that's an exception. This part doesn't happen all the time, And that's the biggest thing here, Peter, is like, most people just aren't patient enough to dedicate the time, because why? They come to us, they like, I need a virtual assistant, I'm hiring this person should be saving me time. Yeah, in the long run, right? But have you spent the time to explain who you are, how your business is, how do you help people, right? How you do things, right? Do you think someone can do all of that in the first few weeks, first few months, right? In a new business? Most of the time it's not, right? It's like some people say, in those kind of like, I guess, HR books, they're always like, when you hire someone, usually like the first 3 to 6 months, it's usually 6 months, they're not that productive, or they're not that helpful, right? Because they're taking that time to understand all those things. True. Then when they finally click into place, then they're like, I get it. I get how things work. And then boom, we go, right? But
Yeah.
most entrepreneurs aren't patient enough with that, because they're like, I hired someone because I don't have time and they should be making me time. Like, yeah, but you should also be dedicating your time to help shortcut their learning, right? And to support them. And the biggest thing I see with, especially with remote teams, is sometimes they just hire them. They're like, you should just figure shit out, Peter. Right? Sorry about the swears, right? It's just that you should figure it out, right? And it's just like, like, how can I figure it out if you're not supporting me? And
True.
so, and that's the biggest thing we see here is like, they should just know. I'm like, how are they going to know this week 3 in your business? You haven't spoken to them on a Zoom call all this time, and then you come and complain to us that, hey, my VA's not up to scratch, right? It's like, you haven't invested the time to show them around and being patient enough to give them that chance to try and figure and to apply what you taught them. And that's one of the biggest trappings here is really like, the training is, yes, you need to have systems and processes in place. Then you have to commit and be okay with committing more time today so that you save more time in the future. But most entrepreneurs don't do that because they're like, I'm so short on time, I've got nothing. I am like fully busy most of the time, right? But I always tell my team, I'm like, look, you can call me or talk to me and ping me, right? And I'll make time for you. Okay. If I'm busy,
Yeah.
I'll tell you I'm busy, but I will get back to you. That's a promise. So please don't feel afraid that you can't ask me. And most people don't do that. Why? Because they're like, I'm busy all the time, right? So then I'm now your employee. I think you're busy all the time, Peter. I'm not going to ask you, hey, man, do you need help, Peter? Or, hey, Peter, I need help with this, because I'm like, well, Peter's too busy. So I'm just going to go figure it out myself and take, 20 hours to figure it out when I could have asked you, Peter, and maybe it would have taken me like 30 minutes or an hour, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then so people get upset about that. But it's like, if you don't make the time for it, how do you expect them to want to commit to you and be okay with it?
Mm. Mm. Yeah. So another issue with this virtual teams and remote working is that of, because for the past few months or thereabouts, I've been seeing a lot of news articles where you see business leaders saying they want their workers back in the office and everything. And one reason why they always say that is the issue of trust, because they've not really figured out how to ensure that these workers are doing what they are doing and all that. So how can business owners build this trust with their remote teams so they can comfortably work remotely with them?
Very good question, Peter. And look, like, I think it comes down back to like control, right? What do we want at the end of the day is like, we want the trust, but we also, how much control are you willing to let go of that, right? Like, if you're not willing to let go of control, you're not going to then increase trust that way. The whole idea, like, come back to the office stuff, I see it, and I see it with like my friends in corporate. Like, they do these Zoom calls, but everyone has their videos turned off, right? And everyone treats it like a phone call. And look, Peter, I know you got yours off, but that's all good, right? Because you got internet problems, so I'm not going to hold it against you, right? Here, but
Yeah.
it's just more like, yeah, how do you build trust? That's the reason, right? Because in our company, right, we're fully remote, right? Full remote, like no office at all. And
Wow.
our requirement is every time we have a meeting, it's like, hey, turn on your video, and if you have internet issues, then you can turn it off right there. But if I notice, right, and everyone does it too, is like, if we notice like someone's always off on video, we go like, hey, what's going on here, right? Like, I can't connect with a photo, right,
True.
of you. And so that's one of the things here for me is like, and I'm glad that Lynn was very on it with there, right? Because some other places that I was starting businesses at, our leadership didn't want that, but here it's like, hey, why's your video off, right? And so it kind of put people in a place of like, you better turn on your video on, right, so that we can communicate properly. And I
Exactly.
think that adds so much, right, in this remote world is like, I don't get to see you. So like, we do a company retreat once a year, right? And so that's the only time I probably get to see the other people, right? And so for us, it's like, there's no other time. We're all working from home. And so it's like, hey, why can't you just, this is one of the requirements here is you have to have your video on, right? Let's say you have bad internet problems. You're like, hey, my video's not working, da 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 da. once off, fine, no issues, right? But if I see it's a repeated thing, then I'm like, there's something off here, right? Why is your video always off? It shouldn't be
True.
like that,
Really true.
and so yeah, so that's one thing that we do here that I notice other corporates don't do much of, because I'm like, why? Well, and then the reason is the leader doesn't turn on their video, right? So then everyone else below them is like, well, guess I don't have to, right? Do that. And then that's why it's like all these leaders are like, hey, I don't know what you're doing because I didn't see you on video, right?
True.
And like, two, like we don't probably check in enough. We don't touch base. We don't chat enough. We don't come in for random like Zoom meetings. So like, you look into my calendar, Peter, like I probably am in like half my week I'm in meetings, and that's booked meetings, right? Like 20 hours of booked meetings, and then that's booked, meaning there are other meetings that either have extended beyond the time or ad hoc where I'm like, hey Bob, can we get a talk real quick, right? And then sometimes that turns out to be like half an hour or whatever it is, and so I think the big trust thing is leaders are waiting for their team to communicate with them instead of going out and reaching out to them, be like, hey, what's going on here, right? So I will reach out to my team, sometimes be like, hey, what's happening with this, right? And then I also put it on my team to be like, hey, in future, right, I've asked about this before, and so I want you to understand, if I'm asking you about it again, it's too late.
True.
I need you to beat me to it, right? So I need you to keep me informed versus me going, and I would love it. I wish I didn't have to do that, but I'm running around, right, doing stuff too. And so when I ask you to do something, I would love for you to keep me abreast on what the hell's happening with you, so that then, I feel like, cool, you're on it and you're managing it, versus me chasing you, right? If I feel like I have to chase you, then I'm like, why are you here? You're not helping me, because I'm basically chasing you up. I shouldn't have to do that, right? If I'm hiring you to come help.
Exactly. So finally, on remote work, what tech tools do you find most useful for managing remote workers?
What was that? What sectors was it, Peter?
No, sorry, tech tools like
What tech
software and
tools?
code. Yeah.
You need a video calling software like Zoom here, right? So that's a definite. You also need a real-time communication tool like Slack or Microsoft Teams or Google Chat, right? Or Facebook Workplace if you want as well. There's a bunch of other ways to do it. I'd say you need those things. And then what else would I say here? I would say those plus, like, to work well remotely, you need like a file storage system like Google Drive or Dropbox, right? Or OneDrive if you use Microsoft. Then I would probably say, like, as you get bigger, you probably want like a project management tool, to keep track of projects. And then like, so we use ClickUp for that. And then as you get bigger and you start having more people communicating with clients and many teams communicating with clients, you then want a CRM tool that pulls in those, like, particularly email communications, right? Yeah, I mean, you'll notice that I didn't say email, right? The email is more for client communications than internal, because we use Slack for everything here, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, it's very rare. The only person that probably sends emails around is probably like my boss and our finance person, right? Or when we get an email from a client and it's like, hey, what do we do with this? But even then, when we get an email from a client, our team, even myself, will screenshot it and then put it into Slack and go, hey, this client said this, can we get some help, right, on that? So like there's those things. And then in terms of, if you want to take it to the next level in terms of like employee engagement on remote teams, we're rolling out this little tool at the moment called Office Vibe, right? So it is a tool that hooks up to your Slack, right? And basically what it does is it sends a pulse survey out every week to be like, hey, Peter, how are you feeling this week, right, with work? And then it asks you like 5 questions, and then it feeds it all back into this survey, so that then, it's a way to just get a feel for how is your team feeling. We just only rolled it out here. The only reason why it's only just rolled out is because I've been personally trying to manage most of the people here where, you know, I'll drop them messages, I'll chat to them, I'll have one-on-ones with them every month type of thing, you know. And so I still treat it like a normal office where, you know, you go out for coffees with your, you know, the people you're managing, right, to talk to about how what's going on in your life and how do I help you. And you know, I do the same here on you know, in a remote environment. Just we just sit down, have a chat on the computer, and I'm just like, just tell me how you're going, right? Just it's like a mental well-being check over there. So we're rolling out an office vibe to try and get a better pulse on that versus just me doing it from that end. So that's some of the tech tool tips that we kind of use here to work well together.
That's great. So we talked about earlier automation, we talked about virtual teams and delegation. So let's say a business owner has gotten this in place. What are some signs that they are ready to scale up and expand their team?
So let's say you got some of those things in place, right? Usually I look at the people, right? And how exhausted are they, right? When things are going worse. And you'll know because they're like stressed out, they'll be short-wired, they'll be frustrated at things, and it's like, hey, is everything okay? You know? And so, you know, sometimes when we think of scale, we think of hiring more people, but it's also like, you know, looking at your processes and seeing, you know, are there niggling things in there that people get, you know, like it just grinds on their gears very slowly, but because not a big deal, but it might grind on their gears a bit, right? And it's just observing that and observing kind of like how people do things. And you'd be like, how do you observe how people do things, Richard, on a remote environment, right? And to be honest, we don't do it that well, Peter, here, right? But it's all about asking the questions of like just getting curious, like, hey, how do you do that thing? Right. And then it's like watching them do it, and they go, this is how I do it. I use this spreadsheet. I'm like, hang on a second, you have to have another spreadsheet on the side to do this thing. Like, why? And they're like, I don't know. It's just what I know, right? And it's then about like just educating people a few things more. And you know, like scale can come in the smallest ways, man. Once you get a little bit bigger, like one of my guys, right, who's recently new in the team, I'm like, dude, I need you to write up this guide. And then I looked at the table of contents and I'm like, I clicked on it. I'm like, how come this is not linkable? Right. And I looked at it and I'm like, what the hell? He manually typed this up. Right. And his document was like 30 pages long. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And you just stop. Right. I'm like, you need to do this. And it's just, it sounds stupid, right? But some people just don't know some of the very basic things because each tool has so many things that you can do with it that you know it's impossible for someone to know everything. And you know, they just don't know what they don't know, right? And so I'm showing this guy, hey, dude, why are you doing this? It's like just literally click here, and then boom, you have your table of contents done, and you just refresh it whenever you have to add new things in. And it blew his mind. He's like, my God, I didn't know that existed, you know. and that's all it really is. It's just like after to hit scale more, you just have to watch how people are doing things, and then you're just observing and looking for patterns of like, hey, this thing kind of like keeps half breaking here, right? And it's just like, let's look into why this half breaking, right? And then that's kind of like what we try and do here is just like we're just looking for things to see how stretched out they are, or if they start breaking a few times, and it's like maybe we need to get a new tool, or maybe we need something better, or maybe we need better people there, right, to do those things. And that's pretty much what you're looking at, right, when you, as signs of like when's a good time to scale, is when you start noticing more problems are occurring because the load is just too much on the team or the processes or the systems.
Yeah. So another thing, when you start scaling, a lot of the time you start encountering different roadblocks. You encounter things like bureaucracy when you're making decisions and all that. So how do you recommend that founders maintain efficiency while they are growing their team and scaling?
I think, that's where it gets interesting, right? Of what is efficient, you know, and you know, if it's like a new tool and all that, then efficiency is more easy to understand and then draw it up. And it comes up to like, you know, you only face resistance when you don't do a good job of communicating the change management of it, right? So I'll give you a very good example. When I first came to Outsourcing Angel, we were running on WhatsApp, Facebook, Messenger, Skype, email, and like, a bunch of other tools that people could communicate on, right? And I was like blown my mind. I'm like, what the hell's going on, right? Why is it that I'm getting WhatsApp messages as well as Skype messages about work, and everyone's just going off everywhere, right? How the hell do I know what's working? I'm like, I hate it, right? I'm like, I get pissed off when people use WhatsApp for work because I find it annoying, because I find that that's where my social circle likes to be on, right? And I want to separate social from work. And so I'm like, guys, we're gonna do this, right? From literally Monday, we're putting it in Slack, and no more messages on all these other platforms, right? And I think about that sometimes. And I did it. We eventually got there. It was fine, right? But I think I could have done better to explain, guys, how many of you guys are enjoying getting messages on Skype and then getting lost as to whether it's on Skype, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, email, right? And not knowing where the hell things are, right? I didn't explain it like that. I just got very frustrated. I was just like, we're just going to chuck this in now. And I basically steamrolled it in, right? And luckily for me, people understood that it's actually helpful. But I probably didn't take my time to explain and get people on board of change management into like, this is why we're putting in Slack, right? And because I didn't do that, I started steamrolling a few other things in, and to a point where the team got frustrated because they're like, Richard, what the freak is going on? No, we're doing too many changes and we don't understand why all these changes are. And I butted heads with the team because I'm like, we need to do this because it's going to help. And they're like, look, it's so many changes going on and we don't know, blah, blah, blah. And this is what happens when you're just going through the first, I guess, rounds of changes for people to experience that have never experienced it before. They're just scared, right? Because I come in, I'm like, I'm getting rid of all your sheets, guys. We're going to put everything in the CRM and all this stuff. They're like, no, my sheets have been the thing I've been using for like 4 years, right? Why the hell are you taking this away? How do I know it's going to be right and all of that? And it's just, if you want to reduce that bureaucracy, you just have to spend that time to educate these people, right? And show them, see, this is how it's better. And then they finally get it right there. And it just takes that patience, right? To really walk it through with them to make sure that, we're not chucking, I'm not telling you to delete your sheet. I'm just saying, do you see, because you have your sheet on your computer, right? It's hard for people to find it and to reference it, especially if we want to do reporting or we want to do this, right? It's hard for us to do that. And, the idea is we want to create transparency so that we don't have to stop you with what you're doing just to ask for this thing. We want to pull it up easily. It's about selling that benefit to them there so that then, these changes can get accepted by the users here, and, all you need to do is just find that one person who's like I wouldn't call the leader, but the one with the most influence, right? And so I found out who that was, and I could see, because usually they're the one that talks the most, right? There. And I said, and we had a mad clash in front of the group where she was really pissed off at me, and I'm like, hey, look, I don't know why you're angry at me here, right? But I feel it and I know it, and it frustrates me because like I just want to make this easier for you. It's not about me trying to, cut your job and get you fired. No, it's about, and this is the thing I think is, when you're putting in these new changes, new tools, new anything, it's like really dig super deep into like, how will this make your life easier, right? And even if it's about like sharing it with the team, it's like, because you share it with the team doesn't have to come and ask you, right? The team doesn't have to, but some people love that, right? That's where the ego comes in, like, I'm important because I'm needed for this information. It's like trying to filter that out. People are like, so when you need information, you can go do this. You can act on your own. You don't need to wait, kind of thing there. And so it's about selling that here, what we're doing is to make life easier for you. And look, the first time that you do it and they don't know who you are, they're going to freak out. And they're going to like, I don't believe you, Peter, right? And so now, like after being an outsourcing agent for like 5 years, every time we put in a change, I'm like, we're going to go do this. Even if they don't totally get it, I've bought enough trust with them to be like, hey, Richard, every time Richard does something like this, it's actually for the better. Even if at that time we don't know what it is or understand why, but it
Yeah.
does turn out to be for the better. So we're going to go with it, you know?
Mm.
So yeah, that's kind of like how I try and get over those little hurdles.
Mm. Mm. Interesting. So when a business owner, probably an overwhelmed business owner, wants to work with you, can you just take us through what you do for them to help them, like you said, get free from their businesses?
Yeah, so a bit of a brief rundown, Peter, on now what we call the systemize and scale up program, right? So that's basically where we're trying to work out your key processes that you're stuck in, right, to free you up. And so you come in, you're like, hey, Richard, I'm let's say this, I'm a business owner, I'm a coach, right? And right now I'm just a coach and I'm coaching clients and stuff like that, but I'm stuck. I can't get more clients, right? Because I'm just full. I just don't have time. And then once my clients start dropping off, then I have to go back out and go sell again, right? And that I just a constant cycle of chasing my tail almost all the time, and I can't scale. So in that scenario, they come to us, and then we help sit down and identify. So Peter, okay, you're a coach, right? Talk to me, right? I want to understand, how do you get leads? How do you close them? Right? What's your sales process? How do you collect money from them? What do you do? What's coaching mean? Right? Are you doing weekly, chats that are like ad hoc, or are you more like, there's a 12-step program they have to go through, right? And each week is it's prescribed like materials that they have to go do. Is it like that? What I want to understand is the whole customer life cycle, right? Of like from the very start to the very end when they leave, right? Your program or your service. Then we want to identify, like, understanding the parts that are keeping you stuck. So for example, with a coach, sometimes these coaches are, they're really great coaches, but they're terrible at managing like where the project is at, right? Meaning you could have, let's say, 5 clients, right, Peter? You have 5 clients, yeah, you can manage it with all in your head, right? But once you get to 10, right, how hard is it then? How hard is that 15, right? For you to figure out, oh man, where is Michael S at, right? There. And so then it's like, cool. So you don't have a project management system in place, Peter. We're going to build one for you. We're going to design it with you to then be like, okay, so if your program is a 12-week program, right? Meaning they go through 12 weeks and then they go on to like a, like monthly coaching afterwards, right? Then it's like we would build out each of those 12 weeks in statuses so that then, and we would draw up the instructions. And what we want to do is then be like, cool, at week 1, they should fill in this assessment. At week 2, they should fill in this for homework. At week 3, we need to send in this video, right? And mapping all of that out so that we can create an individual card for each coachee. And then that card just moves from left to right. Yeah. So that at any moment you can glance at it and be like, Bob S is on week 7, Daniela's on week 10, and we got this new guy in, so I know what to do. I know how to frame myself up for this call and just focus and go in and how to help them. And then it's about then getting support mechanisms through there. So we'll try and automate something. So maybe we'll automate it whereby, maybe they don't need a CRM right now, but like when that payment comes through on Stripe, I am going to capture that person's name and capture their email, and then I'm going to create a template coachee card, right, with their name and place it in week 1, meaning they're in week 1. And then from there, we might have a virtual assistant to help them to be like, cool, you have a client for week 1, Peter, they're done now. Then you move the card to week 2, and then that triggers an alert to the virtual assistant to then go, cool, I just got this, means Peter just finished week 1 call with him. I'm going to send an email, right? I'll template up the email and send it off to the client saying, hey, the first call with Peter was great. Here's the recording. And by the way, right, Peter said that, you need to fill in this assessment or whatever. Here it is, right? There. And so that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to break down the process so small that then we can map it out, template it up, right? Build automations around it. So then maybe in week 3, right? We even automate it whereby like, you move it to week 3 and then bang, an email goes out from your email, Peter, going, hey, thanks for the call. John, right? And by the way, here's the video I was talking about here that you should check out, right? And that can be an
Yeah.
automated email from your email that we build out. And so that then you don't even need the VA at that point, right? Sometimes you want the VA in because maybe the VA needs to collect data and then put it in, right? And fill it in for you. So then you're ready for your next call, right? And so we're looking at those things there. So usually we look at like, client onboarding, we look at how they collect the money, right? There, we also look at, what else do we look at there? We might look at other things of like, whether it could be social media marketing type of assistance as well, so that they can have like a social media content machine, right? That can produce the content with their virtual assistant typically. And now with the AI tools around, there's so many great ways you can create content very easily with just like 1 or 2 people now, right? Versus like, how you needed a whole team of like a graphic designer, a copywriter, a video editor, and all these things here, right? And you can get, a lot of these tools can combined together to help you create a repurposing, content machine here, and so it's looking at those things there. So we pick usually like 3 to 5 of those processes areas, and then we build around that for them, right? And we go in, we deep dive, and then we build out the checklists, we build out the procedures, right? And the procedures aren't like 90-page documents, right? We're trying to build workflows and then tie it in with Loom videos, like 5-minute screencasting videos to show people how to do the work online very easily, versus like 90-page screenshots and text, right? Because that is like, that's early 2000s, right? You can't do that anymore, right? And so that's kind of like the kind of work we do here, Peter, to try and help people, I guess, redesign their business so it works without them. I can't say I can redesign your whole business, right, in like 3 months, but it's starting the foundations there, so that then it frees you up a bit. Then you can go look at what else next do you need to do for your business, right? Do you need to then, go out and hire another coach so that they are coaching, right? And then you go out to do business. Or if you're a coach here, you're probably doing it, is then, cool, I got to systemize the process of how I do one-on-one coaching. Maybe there's a demand now for me to replicate this, but in a one-to-many model, right? In a group coaching model, because now I have a 12-week program that works one-on-one. How do I expand that into a one-to-many model? And then that might be the next phase, so then that opens up a whole new service line. But because you have a process built in for one-on-one, you can change it, tweak it slightly for the whole one-to-many group coaching. So then you just have, group batch 1, group batch 2, group batch 3, and they go through these 12-week cycles, right? On the same thing. And then that just leverages you more. So that's kind of like some of the things that we do, Peter.
That's great. So when as we come to the end of the episode today, do you have any parting advice for business owners on what we've talked about: automation, virtual teams, scaling up, and the rest?
Yeah, I mean, look, so much more we could probably talk about. I probably would just suggest this, right? It's sometimes we find business owners come to us pretty late, right? When I say pretty late, like they're swamped, they're hammered, they got no time, and they're just barely breathing, right? And I need help with a VA. And by then it's really hard, because it's like you have to invest that time, you have to invest that effort, you have to invest all of those things in there to help them, right? And they just don't want to commit to it. And then they think, you know what, man, hiring a VA is just not worth it. I'm just gonna pay more, because if I pay more, I get a local person and they can do it better. There's no guarantee on that, and so as scary as it is, sometimes, like, when you're in profit, maybe not a lot, it's about thinking early ahead, right? And strategizing. Like, I'm always looking at what we're doing, and I'm like, okay, we're probably going to need a person here and here and in this team here. And it's about, resource management and thinking about what is the next hire you need to then expand your business, and it's about thinking about that already in your head. And then, whether you get a virtual assistant or you're just scouting for other people out there, right? Always be thinking ahead, and then always be willing to go, you know what? I'm going to get someone a little bit earlier than I might get normally, because I want to train them up. I want them there so that, yes, I might have to go negative for a few months, right, to pay for them, but the idea is in the long term, after those few months, they can take on more, frees me up a little bit, and then I can go out and go sell more, you know. And so when it comes to scale, like it's never too late, but it's always better to do it early, right? So that then, you know, you can move things along. And, you know, all I say is like, you just have to have enough runway for it. So most people, they don't think like, hey, I can pay my next hire for the next 2 or 3 months. I'm like, no, you need to think about 6 to 12 months, right, of being able to pay that person, so that then they have the right amount to run through with to make it, right, to hit that turning point of like, hey, I finally get everything. Now I can add more value to the business in that way. Because otherwise, like, you get a VA and then you're like, hey, after 1 month, you're not making money for me, Peter, mate, we're going to cut it, because then it's not going to make it. And so, yeah, that's pretty much like what I'm thinking here in terms of one of the big points for business owners, mate.
How can listeners reach you? Probably don't want to listen to your podcast, they want to listen to your speeches or read your book or something else, or work with you.
Yeah, best place to reach me is probably to go on my LinkedIn, right? So if you just type in Richard Phu, right, you'll see, like, you know, there isn't that many out there, right? The bald Asian guy, right, with glasses there, right? Yeah, otherwise, like, you know, we do have my own website, which is richardphu.com, but that's, you know, really old and I need to update that. Otherwise, if you guys ever want to learn more about how we help people, a great place to go is to, you know, outsourcingangel.com.
All right, so we'll link all of them in the show notes once we go live. So if you want to work with Richard, you want to listen to his podcast, his speeches, or anything else, you can just go through the links in the show notes and you can connect there. So thank you so much, Richard, for coming on the Tech Your Business podcast today.
No worries, Peter. Excited, mate. And look, man, I love what you're doing here. And so hopefully this was a great episode for people as well.
Definitely.
So, thanks, man.
Definitely. I learned a lot from you too, because a lot of the problems you're talking about are things I experience at the end of the day.
Oh,
Yes.
mate, that's business, right?
That's true. So yeah, so for listeners, any listener who has been with us up to this point, thank you for being with us. Thank you for listening to the Tech Your Business show. And until next week, when we come back with another episode of the show, don't forget to keep taking your business. Bye for now.